Today, in the driver's seat, we have North West fisherman and independent candidate in the Braddon area, Craig Garland. How you doing, Craig?
Yeah, doing all right.
And whereabouts are we at the moment, Craig?
We're at the top of the Hea Gorge, on the Wynyard side.
Yep.
Yeah, heading towards Waratah.
Heading towards Waratah, and we're about to go through some pretty nice forest area.
Yeah, this is a reserve down here. You can see on the map there that it was set aside, protected quite a long time ago.
Yep.
It's all mixed species. The Hea River runs through it.
So this area around here, is it?
That's all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, protected.
Fantastic. All right, well, you're pretty comfortable. I'm going to show you a couple more things, and then we're going to head out and we're going to have a bit of a chat about the North West Tassie and a bit of political chat.
Yep.
We mentioned as we were coming up here a few things about this area and this forest. You've grown up in this area. You want to tell us a little bit about this area and the threats that it's facing?
Well, yeah, it's been logged for a long time. Fortunately, someone had the good sense to protect this area here, the catchment of the Hea, all the way down here. The Hea joins the Arthur River, which flows from Waratah, Mount Bischoff. The Arthur was heavily polluted and, from the mine, the tin mine at Mount Bischoff. Yeah, there's some beautiful country down here, old logging roads and what have you. Still lots of big timber, good trout fishing. Back in the day, there used to be a works camp down here, public works department. They used to maintain the road, come back here of an evening for their meals. The fellow there was quite common knowledge that he used to feed these thylacines that were there in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, fair dinkum.
Yeah, they used to come up to the back door and he'd leave the scraps there for them.
Wow.
And if they're like most native animals, I've come to know, like the bandicoot, for instance, our property at Montague, we started having roast chicken and that, and I put a whole carcass in a cage to catch some cats and ended up catching a big bandicoot that devoured the whole carcass of the chicken, and then from that point on, whenever we cooked chicken, we'd have bandicoots at the back door waiting for the slop trays. So I reckon with the thylacine, I was told that they love pork, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
You know, they certainly like chickens. My granddad had one in his chicken coop when my mum was quite young. They used to call them hyenas back then. Yeah, so there's a lot of this country, gorge, thick, heavily forested, and it stretches all the way to the west coast. You know, the Tarkine, which is a word that's been used, I don't really know where it begins and ends, to be honest. You know, it's sort of all linked in a way.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you fished a lot of the streams around here as well over the years.
Yeah. No, I've walked nearly all the streams and rivers around here one time or another, and seen the changes. You know, the extensive farming, the drawing of water, the damming of the river courses, the siltation from logging, the effect that had on the freshwater crayfish. You know, we've got most of our rivers and catchments have got good, healthy, clean sections. You know, so you've got a good canvas to work with as far as restoring. And you know, when we get our catchments back and healthy, then we'll see the benefits in our inshore marine environment. You know, it's all linked. And good clean water in today's world, how priceless is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing more valuable, really.
No.
So you think that you know that with the right policies that a lot of these places can start making a comeback? Yeah,
my word. You know, we're very liberal in the way of funding too. You know, you look at the forestry industry here, their nursery area there at Perth. It's massive. You know, we could propagate. We should be propagating leatherwood. We should be putting back those. You know, they take a long time to be able to produce nectar and that for bees. But you know, the first step is now. You know, and we should stop. They should be listed as a protected species, the leatherwood tree. But you know, they've been clearing acres and burning it for the last 30 years and still doing it. You know. This sustainable tag is just another marketing spin, you know, it's just another deception and lie. And when you factor in that we're subsidising this show, and propping it up so that we watch our forests get knocked down, we watch the boom gates get put up, and then we watch them burn what's left. It's just stupidity. I mean, if you boomed in here from another planet and you had to explain to an alien what you're doing and why, it becomes me.
Yeah.
There's nothing in it for us. No one wins. We all lose out of this.
Yeah. And you say it's being subsidised by the Tasmanian state government? Or?
Yeah. You know, if you go to John Lawrence's site, he breaks it all down. You know, and you're talking millions and millions and millions of our dollars to prop up this whole industry.
So why is it being done? Is it just the interests of a few at the very top with political connections, or?
Well, it's like everything else. They're in denial. You know, they can't address anything because if they did and did what needed to be done, it'd be a direct admission that they got it wrong and they've failed. And we all know what it means now to stand up and say, "Oh, I got it wrong. I failed." I mean, if someone was willing to do that within the major parties, how much respect would that garnish from people like me and everybody else that just wants things dealt with? We all want a good, clean, bright future ahead of us, and they're not providing that. And forestry has generally been the wedge, you know, the greenie. You're either a greenie if you don't want to smash everything down, or you're I don't know what you are.
They categorise you as that.
Yeah, you know, but that's losing relevance.
Yeah.
You know, everyone in the Braddon electorate that I know is fully aware of what the Liberal Party is or isn't right now at this point in time, and nationally too. They do not represent or portray the Australia or the Australian people that I know. They're the problem.
Yeah. And do you see now? You've run as an independent in both state and federal elections over the last few years, and you are your vote is growing. You got over 10% of the vote when you first started, I heard.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a change in public perception around these issues over the last couple of years? Are people becoming more politically engaged now than what they were?
My word, they are. You know, I can't remember a time for the people of the North West where we're being barraged with wind farms for foreign companies, for salmon farm expansion for foreign companies, our parks being given up in secret deals and signed off that belong to us. You name it, right across the board. The West Coast Tracks issue, which is huge for us people in the Northwest. That's our traditional camping, fishing area that we've gone to for a long time. The Liberal Party said they won't be closed. They've backflipped. They're just bald-faced lies. And people hate being lied to. And my biggest confidence right now is knowing the Braddon electorate like I do. They're slow to move, but once they're presented with the facts and the truth behind it all, once you lose them, you've lost them. And we're the biggest swingers in the nation, and that's the most comforting thing for me. If people are given the information and the facts, and if they want to keep throwing their vote behind the Liberal Labor Party, well, it says more about them than it does about anybody else. So.
Absolutely. There's a few things you mentioned there that I want to kind of dive into, but first of all, the West Coast Tracks. So you're saying the Liberal Party went to the election, they weren't going to close that down, and now because of public pressure in the region, they are capitulating on that and changing.
I think the Tas Aboriginal Corporation is involved. A few years ago, they were talking about handing back that West Coast area, the Tarkine, to the TAC. Now, handing back implies ownership. The TAC and their descendants were the direct enemies of the 8 to 10 tribes of the Northwest that no longer exist. So what they're inferring or asking to do is give back to the traditional enemies of the place land which never belonged to them. And all that's doing is perpetuating division. It's not making it inclusive for the Aboriginal community that is not recognised by the TAC. In Circular Aboriginal Corp, they're not recognised by the TAC. So, you know, so these deals and private little things that are going on between groups and parties and corporations, no more. You know, we need our own advisory body with our own people making the decisions where we go and what we do with the land which we all own, you know. It's just common sense. It's called democracy, you know. Every avenue, our councils, it's just token. You know, you're voting for a councillor, but he gets in there, he can't do anything about salmon farms.
Yep.
Can't do anything about anything else. They just go, so...
Powerless.
Yeah, that's right. So we have to, you know, it's got to get back to the community. And my answer to all of this is I think there's 30 municipalities in this state. If you elected your member from your municipality, every community knows who and what they have to offer and if they're community minded or not.
Yeah.
That would... West Coast, 4,000 voters, they never get a voice.
Yeah.
You know, give them a voice. It's only fair. We're supposed to be living in a democracy and it's not working right now. So yeah, you elect your member from your town and put him in the local council chambers. No new office space to be, use the staff and the infrastructure there and make him or her accountable to the people that put them in the position.
Yeah, local representation.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on an advisory council for quite a while. For I think the first 6 years I was the only voice from the whole North Coast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, that's ridiculous. And when we have a lot of positive things going on in our fishery here, where there's problems elsewhere. North Coast, we've got emerging fisheries. It's going gangbusters. The heavy industry's gone. We're getting back to a place probably pre-European, you know.
Yeah, wow.
So
more sustainable.
Well, the species, the King George whiting, the pulp mill in Burnie went from 2 paper machines in 1946 to 18 in 1948. The amount of effluent that was thrown out, they now know that effluent kills fish larvae.
Yep.
And the King George whiting here are distinct genetics to the northwest. Since the pulp mill's gone, we started catching breeding fish. The numbers build up. We're catching juveniles now, and that's an emerging fish. We've had 3 good year class of recruits. Another 1 or 2, and we've got a fishery there we can talk about, in my view, access for our young. The young have been locked down in the northwest area for a long time. Little job opportunities, you know, just to get a pair of shoes or a driver's license is beyond most of them. So we need to look at what we've got with an avenue to bringing in our young people and engaging them.
Yeah.
And you can do it in schools, you know, replanting river tracks, putting up fences, skills to be learned there in conjunction with community members donating their time. We've got the manpower, we've got the resources, and we've got such a beautiful place, Tassie. It's, you know, it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Staying on fishing, you mentioned before that I think a while back you were in a town hall with Richard Flanagan.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on the salmon farming, and I'm guessing you probably had a look at Richard's book.
Yeah, I've read 2 or 3 chapters and he's spot on with everything I read there, and I haven't had time to read the rest of it, but I will do. But I've sort of heard firsthand from a lot of the people, and you know, I've had 8 or 9 years at it now. And thank God for what he's done. That's just put it into the bigger landscape on the mainland. Our Premier thinks it's a terrible thing. Well, if they dealt with this industry and managed it, and also this grab for our waterways. You look at what happened in the northwest. We heard about salmon farm expansion coming into the northwest on the 6 o'clock news. Our mayor was there going, I don't think anybody would mind in this area if salmon farms come in, there'd be jobs. And I thought, well, how about asking the fishermen for a start?
Yeah, but there's no engagement at all.
No, and you look at that, the minister at the time, Jeremy Rockcliffe, handed over or allocated a grow-out area to his cousin Peter Rockcliffe from Quota Seafoods, who have now on-sold to Sealord Nasui. So without one fisherman at the table, without 1 cent changing hands, we've had a reallocation of a wild fishing area over to a foreign company with a terrible track record that's not allowed to do this open net aquaculture in New Zealand.
Wow.
And then if you want to go into the trawlers on the west coast, they're trawling up 12,000 tonne of our blue grenadier spawning stock, Sealord Nasui. Tuna Seafoods own the quota, killing albatross, killing seals. They've got render plants on there, so the fish meal that will go into there, God knows what's going into them. They don't have to have cameras on the boats. And this gets worse. In New Zealand last year, there was a trawler from Sealord that was caught fishing in a protected area for new blue grenadier in their own fishery. They do not respect their own rules, regulations, and the other thing is they collapsed that fishery there, which was ranked 7th in the world, I think, their blue grenadier, and pushed a particular albatross species to the point of extinction.
Wow.
This is what we're dealing with. And you look at the return, 12,000 tonne of blue grenadier, you expect there'd be some return to the community that own those fish. A couple of forklift drivers to unload them on the boat.
Bloody hell. And everything, all the profits just go offshore, I guess.
What is happening here is treasonous at every level. And people have to wake up. And if they don't, well, they're bloody morons.
Yeah.
They're given the facts now. The biggest problem we've had here is they're not getting the facts. The paper is the Liberal Party Gazette. Is not giving all the information out and the details and throwing a one-sided view.
Yeah.
So people, they need to find that information out for themselves, you know.
Yeah.
We're at the end game now. It's a race for what's left in the way of resources, and I'm sick of watching this place being done over for a pittance and handed out for nothing, and we suffer all the way along. And the West Coast tracks issue, all the areas I grew up, you could camp along the coast. You know, they've locked us out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, saying it's for our own benefit and to protect the place. Well, there was no problems there for 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
Once they started turning up in uniforms with a gun on their hip, parks rangers and that, you know, we've been locked out of everywhere. We've had enough down here.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the local media. In order to counter that, so you're probably having a lot of conversations down at the wharf with other fishermen. I know you're getting pretty active on social media as well.
Word of mouth in the Braddon electorate. When I had a business, you could pay all the advertising you want, but word of mouth and putting out a quality product is what brought people to my door. Yep. Getting the truth and the facts is what will swing people where they need to go.
Yeah. And word of mouth, I'm from regional Queensland, central Queensland, and I totally understand what you're saying, because word of mouth in my hometown travels very fast as well.
My word.
And it's very strong.
Yes.
And it's really our only counter to a media which is completely owned by large corporations to a large extent anyway.
Yeah.
And what have we got here? Is some monocrop.
They're native pepper trees, these ones here. This was all grassland.
Oh, yeah.
When Henry Heyer came up here in the summer and saw all the wildlife and the game and beautiful grassland, he thought this was a great place for sheep, but as it turns out it wasn't. They lost big time the first winter. I don't think they even lasted the second one. So yeah, traditionally it was all grassland plains. Tree plantations came in.
Mm-hmm.
If you look over on the distance, you can see the tree plantations there, but just over beyond, you got your rainforest and that.
Oh, yeah.
Waratah, I think it had the record down here for rainfall. One in 1952 or 58, I think it rained 350 days of the year.
Holy smokes! Wow.
Yeah. Beautiful town though.
Yeah.
And the tin ore that came out of Waratah more or less built Launceston. All those grand houses there, they all bought shares. He did a float, I think. I don't understand shares and all the rest of it, but I think he had to float some shares, sell them to get the money to, and they all did very well in Launceston.
Right.
So, Philosopher Smith was his name.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, Mount Bischoff. Mount Bischoff isn't there anymore. She's all gone.
Yeah, wow.
And then you had the seepage from that, which polluted the Arthur River. So we got extensive mining history. It used to be a sawmill just up here when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was 130 sawmills before the regional forest agreement, which was brought in to protect the supply for sawmills. I reckon you can count them on 2 hands now what's left.
Oh.
I used to ship all the bolster packs out of Burnie through the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I dealt with people that owned the sawmills and their product and what have you.
So I've heard that you're very well connected in the community up here.
Yeah, well, I come out of the Navy and went straight to the waterfront. I got lumbered with the waterside workers' payroll because the fella doing it was fucking it up and kept making mistakes, and they threatened to kill him. And so I advanced pretty quickly into that, so I got to know all those people. And then sporting, I played sport nearly every day of the week: football, basketball. Went to every disco. We used to have 5 discos a week there in the 80s. 80s was great.
Yeah, nice. And so you are looking to run in the upcoming federal election, whenever that's gonna be?
Yep. I've heard it's March next year. If you can take any heed of, that's where the sawmill used to be here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's in March next year, I believe, but we'll see. See what happens. But yeah, I'll put my hand up. I'm hoping a few others do too. You know, we need a bit of diversity and a bit of skin in the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're coming into the Wandle River here. I think this is protected as well. It's great coming. Get a lot of snow here.
Oh yeah.
Different years. It's your celery pine. They grow sort of like a Christmas tree.
Oh yeah, that's a native as well.
Yeah.
There's going to capture some of this. Yeah, I've been in Tassie for a couple of months now, and some of the drives are just absolutely spectacular down here.
In winter, the snow sits on these trees coming up through here, and you're sort of driving under the canopy.
Yeah, wow, fantastic.
This is a great car to drive.
Yeah, and you'll feel as you go around the corners, it's really low to the ground, like really flat around the corners. Yeah. Oh, this is beautiful through here. Jeez.
Yeah, you can't beat the mixed species forests.
Wow.
Yeah, bugger all weeds in here.
Yeah,
you know.
And I guess the soil and everything,
it
just takes thousands of years to build up, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And so, God knows what's in this rainforest, you know, in the way of plants, medicines, and whatever else. And Tassie generally is so biodiverse. You go over the hill here and you're in a total different environment. It's the same in our marine environment. You go half a kilometre or a kilometre and the whole bottom changes, the whole species range changes. You know, and it's always been my concern. You take away a small area, you think, oh, it's only a little area, but you're possibly taking away stuff that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
So
because it's so diverse, and I guess also you might be taking out an area that's critical to a particular species that maybe migrates as well.
Yeah. And once you open up the rainforest, the wind gets in and it dries out. You create the fire risk that's created. I've seen what they've done, and I think there was a report just recently about how native forest logging is increasing our fire risk. Mm-hmm. All these eucalypt plantations, high in oil, you know, they explode. They get to a critical point, and then all that oil implodes, and once they go, there's no stop.
So this is all monocrop here?
Yeah, these are all tree plantations.
And would this have been forest at one point? Native forest?
Patches of forest, mixed species with the open button grass. There's an Aboriginal pathway from Valentine's Peak to Waratah all the way to Tema. And all these grand walks they're talking about, which they're doing in, you know, the pathways are all here for the Aboriginal pathways. A little bit, all you're doing is opening up existing tracks. And the North West in particular, it starts there at Wynyard. You got the walking track from Boat Harbour to Sisters Beach, and then from Sisters Beach to Rocky Cope, then from the beach along to Stanley. You could link up that whole area, and particularly to Robbins Island. That's where the 8 or 10 Aboriginal tribes in North West, they converge there every October on the full moon, and they conducted their ceremonies and intermarriage, which they had to do to maintain their diversity. Mm-hmm. Most significant site possibly in the state as far as significance to those 8 or 10 tribes, and they want to put the biggest wind farm in the southern hemisphere there.
Wow.
And it's incidentally the largest migratory shorebird habitat in the state. 20-odd thousand migratory birds go there, and they want to put the biggest wind farm in the state there. You know, there's just these stupid projects that nobody gives any much thought to.
Yeah.
And they don't want to, you know, like.
Yeah, I want to talk about that wind farm a bit more as well, because was that the one that Bob Brown came out against as well? there's been a fair bit of resistance to that. Now it's not that people are against renewable energy. It's just in that particular spot, it's just not
wrong location.
Yeah,
You know, that will impact migratory shorebirds. It will impact Aboriginal significance, cultural aspects. It will impact our fishing. They have to put a causeway across that channel, and also a 500 metre breakwall out into our fish breeding area. Then they have to compulsorily acquire farmers' land. They have to cut a 120 metre swathe through our sections of our forest reserves to put their transmission lines. Then they have to go through the scenic Learngana, Leven Canyon area and the eagles that will be affected. And no benefit to us. I engaged Garland Energy to give it to me in layman's terms. The cost benefits, the cost breakdown. He basically said, apart from the Smith and Tuck shop and tall timbers in the construction stage for accommodation, there is nothing in the community for this in the community at all.
Wow.
All benefits flow north to the mainland.
So tell us about. Did you say Garland Energy?
Garland Energy. They're energy consultants. The government uses them, I believe.
And who's going to be the owner of the farm?
Well, foreign owned.
Foreign owned as well.
All benefits flow north, and all profits to the foreign owned company. And it will probably be on sold to Shenhua or whatever they are, or another foreign company. So we get nothing out of it as Tasmanians. Impact forestry, fishing, farming, Aboriginal, birds, tourism, forestry. For what? For nothing.
Yeah.
You know.
And it doesn't need to. Renewable projects don't need to be done by large corporations. We've seen in Victoria, Hepburn Wind was a community owned and operated wind farm there that's supplying heaps of energy, but then the community has the say in where it goes. And I actually interviewed Steph Hodgins-May on a drive. We drove past it a couple months ago. She's from that area, and it sounds like it's just been a really successful project where it has been community led. What's stopping us from doing that in areas like this?
Our government.
Yeah.
You know, that's plain and simple. And there's a better alternative that the Liberal Party have been stalling for the last 2 years. The West Coast Renewables Project for down behind Granville Harbour. It's using existing infrastructure, the Reese power station that's already there, and the easements that are already. There's no forestry impacts, there's no bird impacts. They've done the study. There's certainly no migratory shorebirds there. There's no fishing impacts. It's Australian owned and run using Australian superannuation funds to back it. 2,000 construction jobs, hydrogen production, and that project has been stalled by the Liberal Party here for 2 years now over a mineral lease site on the far corner. So they're holding that one up for 2 years while they're pushing this one here, which is just impacting all and sundry. You know. So you'd have to ask the Liberal Party about that, but and then you got Marinus, which we got Basslink now, which is I think they're still in the courts with that. It's never worked since we've had it.
This is the second line.
Yeah, they want to put another one, which is basically like treating cancer with more cancer. You know, like Basslink doesn't work. It certainly won't return a profit to us Tasmanians in our lifetime. And they want to throw another cable across there and spend $30-odd billion so to make power prices cheaper for us. Look, it's just ridiculous.
I'm not across this issue.
It's the Liberal Party, Marinus, and Robbins Island wind farm ties in with it, and and a few others. Yeah. But you're right. There is no plan. There is no community involvement with where we put these things and where we don't. And wanting to put them in Stanley, one of our most scenic tourist towns in Australia. Yeah. It's just, you know, they don't care about us Tasmanians. They don't care about the environment, and it's a sad indictment of where we've got to. Yeah. And we'll go this way.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of problems, but there sounds like there's a lot of hope as well in the growth of local engagement.
Yeah. We've got so much that we can embrace. the Aboriginal history, which is just coming to light now, work by Dr. Ian McFarlane on that evidence-based history. You know, you can link up the pathways that are already there. The fish traps we have on the northwest coast predate the pyramids.
Yeah,
that's
wow.
the Aboriginal fish traps. Then you've got the Aboriginal caves. There's 4 or 5 of those between Rocky Cove and Sisters. And then tied into Robbins Island, the most significant site to the 8 to 10 tribes of the northwest coast. And then if you continue on to Suicide Bay and Cape Grim and down Premagata, the west coast, there's engagement for our youth into help build the pathways and put up the relevant information and retain people and give back our camping areas and show people the hospitality and our culture firsthand.
Yep.
You know, look at Cradle Mountain. They've turned that into a well-heeled playground for the middle class and well-heeled. Us locals locked out or priced out in the process. We own that place.
Yeah.
You know, we're not having any more of this, and I'll fight tooth and nail to stop it from happening and down here.
Good stuff.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. Our fishing, our emerging fisheries. For God's sake, we've got the biggest King George whiting in the country by double. We've got the oldest population. They're breeding in this area. The genetics are distinct to this place. I took that along to Melbourne University, did all the science. I called the samples for them, got all the science together, thought this is a huge story.
Yeah.
King George whiting ticked 3 boxes. They're the most sought after inshore sport fish in southeast Australia. They're the most valuable inshore fin fish we have, and they're arguably the finest eating inshore fin fish we have. And we have the biggest in the country. I took that report along to Jeremy Rockcliffe, put it on his desk, and I thought this is great, this is huge. And he asked me where they breed, and Craig and I pointed to on the map, and he looked at his advisor and nothing was said, didn't look at the report. The reason being, where I pointed to was where they'd already given up for salmon farm expansion. I had no idea. I found out months later on the evening news, that's where they were going. So I've come along with this big news story. I gave that report to the Advocate and thought, you know, print this is big, you know.
Yeah.
Never saw the light of day.
Yeah, wow.
And this is what they are. They were planning before they got elected all of this expansion. This has been in the pipeline for quite some time, and they've kept it away from the community and then thrown it at us on the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah, wow.
And so
that is absolutely disgraceful, isn't it?
Oh, mate, you know, that northwest area there is the most crucial fish breeding feeding area in this state. You know, and here's the other thing. I went around all the fishermen at the time. I said, you know, show me on the map, you know, the shark fishermen, the cray fishermen, and the ab fishermen. Show me where you fish, and I'm going to take it along to Quota and show them. So I did all this, took it to them on a map, and said, look, they don't want you here under any circumstances, and this is why. But Quota took that map, produced their own. I got a copy of it in my shed, and then handed it out to senators. 10 of us on there. And one of them asked, oh, what do these fishermen think about you coming into this area? And they lied. They said, oh, they're all for it.
Yeah, wow.
Lying bastards. You know, and this all comes from the top. When you've got a Prime Minister and a whole department of ministers and everything else lying continually, it filters down to the dodgy bloody middlemen like UPC and Eperon and the rest of them. They've come in spreading lies. The lies they told about me. Unknowing to them that I'm so well connected, the people they were lying to come back and told me, and then when I went and addressed them and said, what are you saying? And they denied it, and they said, who's saying this? And I said, this couple over here. I said, if you're telling me they're not telling the truth, I suggest you go and see them.
Yeah.
They never went and saw them. And it was quite malicious what they do, and they bought into that Erica Betts violence against women thing. Yeah, one of their representatives told a couple from Circle Head that the last time she spoke to me, I verbally abused them.
Right.
Which was an absolute lie. I spoke to her on 3 occasions, and twice I was accompanied by another person, but I never ever abused her.
So just a pure hit job on you.
She was trying to smear me. At that time, I was in the papers of violence against women, and rah rah rah, and then she was trying to do the same with a couple unknowingly that knew me, didn't know me very well, but they felt good enough to come and tell me what she'd said.
So it's basically, yeah, it's a culture of of manipulation that comes from the very top. It starts with the federal government,
Yep.
and you see it, as you say, with Scott Morrison. You see it in the News Corp media manipulating people, basically lying to people to try to further the interests of large corporations over smaller independent operators.
Yeah. And look at Scott Morrison. If you go back into his history, there was I can't remember his name in New South Wales. He was the bright liberal man, and Morrison set about smearing him and degrading him to the point, and he elevated himself to the position where he is now by doing that on a continual basis.
Yeah.
He's a total charlatan.
Yeah.
And he needs to go, and we're not going to get any respect on the world stage until we get someone that represents the Australians that I know.
Absolutely.
You know, like he's a disgrace.
Yeah, I mean, Australia is facing some really big, well, the world's facing big problems, but especially Australia as well. And we've got a marketing man, a salesman at the top at a critical time. So we really have to we have to really start now and start building this movement to approaching the next election. We need to get as much community engagement as we possibly can, and we need to get people fired up. And from talking to you today, Craig, I can hear that you're fired up and you're ready to go, and you're communicating a lot of this stuff to your community.
No, they need to send a loud message to these major parties that enough is enough. Now, it's squarely at the feet of the voters now, and if they want to ignore and keep blindly doing what they've always done, I think a rugby coach said you'll always get what you. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get something or other.
Yeah. Isn't it stupidity's doing the same thing and expecting a different result?
No, well, that's,
like that.
yeah, Einstein said that. If you keep doing the same thing, getting the same result. So we need someone to take us to where we want to be, and everyone's so focused on the future, our families, our children, the environment, and all these bastards are focused on is money. You know, it always comes back to money. That's the problem, and we have more than enough money to engage everybody in some meaningful, here building the tracks, re-vegging the rivers, fencing off areas, helping our wildlife along. Nature, with a little bit of help, will do the rest. In most cases you just leave it alone and back she comes. So and I pointed out in the town hall the other day in Stanley there, I said how much money has been generated from our forestries, from our farms, from our fisheries, from our mines in this place, and how much have we put back into restoring what needs to be done? Very little. It's time for putting back in. And just recently, I think there was more millionaires per capita in the circular head area than anywhere else in Australia.
Wow.
So I called out to a few of them to put a bit of money back into the local community, engage a few young people,
because all the solutions are there. The government has the capacity to do this work. It has the capacity to shift our resources and labour into these areas that are regenerative. And as you said, that it's not doing that again because it's just operating in the interest of large corporations. But it does still give me a lot of hope that nature can make a comeback. If, as you say, it'll do most of the work itself. We just need the right leadership at the top.
Yeah, that's it. Direction. And leadership. And
now, do you want to try? Are you keen to try a bit of autopilot?
How does that work?
So what'll happen? When you're ready, you can double tap on the right hand paddle. Not just yet. See the gear stick paddle. I'll just explain what's going to happen. 2 blue lines is going to come up here, and then when the blue lines are on, the car will be driving itself. So we'll just wait till we come around this corner. So 2 blue lines will come on, and then just be soft with the wheel. But at any time you can take over. You can push the brake, or you can turn the wheel and take over again. But it'll be in autonomous mode. So you can just back it off a little bit. You should be alright. And now just try double tap down. Down hard on the top. Now, Just try. Oh no, you're driving now.
I'm on.
You're driving, yeah. So you have to wait till the blue lines are on. So double tap down again. Now it's in auto. Just gently, really gently with the wheel. At any time you can take over, right?
Yeah.
And now it'll take this corner fine. If you put too much pressure on it, you'll pull it out and it'll take over. But this is fine. It's got this corner.
Yeah.
This is a pretty decent corner, and just a little touch there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's good. So every now and then it'll just prompt you just to give it a slight touch. How's that feel?
Roll of smoke.
Yeah.
Have a stuffy.
Have a coffee. It's pretty wild where the technology is at the moment. So yeah, I drove 90% of the way from Melbourne to Central Queensland in autonomous mode.
Fair dinkum.
Yeah. Just give it a slight touch when it's flashing blue. Just like move the steering wheel slightly. There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
That's it.
What does a car like this cost if you don't mind?
So the base Model 3 actually costs around 60 grand.
Yeah.
And that may seem expensive, but the battery packs in Teslas will actually do well over 1 million kilometers in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So there's a guy in Germany who's got a Model S from 2012.
Yeah.
He's done 1.4 million kilometers. He's averaging 400 kilometers a day for the last almost 10 years, just to see how far he can push it.
Yeah.
Same battery pack, same motors, well over 1 million kilometers. And the new battery packs with Tesla, they're saying they'll do 1 million miles, so 1.6 million kilometers.
Wow.
Now, 1 million kilometers, someone asked me the other day, what is 1 million kilometers in years? And I said, oh, that's a good question. So the average Australian does 35 to 40 kilometers per day, which is about 15,000 kilometers a year. Now, to get 1 million kilometers, that's 66 years of driving.
Yeah.
Same battery pack, same motors, and there's no maintenance schedule either on these cars.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
So when you put it like that, it's actually quite a cheap car.
Yeah. Well, I do 60,000 a year. That's about my average.
So that'd be divided by 4. So yeah, 60 divided by 4 would be about 15 years. 15 years, and you'd still, like, it may go a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
Even with if you're doing that many miles.
Yeah.
And to charge this thing, now I was getting 10 cents a kilowatt hour off peak in Melbourne. It's a 75 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Yeah.
And fully charged it'll do 460 kilometers. So I could fully charge it for $7.50.
Wow.
You get 460 kilometers for that.
No, good thing to have.
Yeah. And the great thing, like, as well, so the new Tesla battery packs are fully recyclable, so all the lithium and the nickel will be recycled out of them.
Yeah.
But when you got a car that'll do 4, 5, 6 cars worth of mileage, that's 4, 5, 6 times less iron ore or copper or glass or plastic that you need to extract from the earth.
Yeah.
That's 4 or 5 times less mining, less destruction on our land as well.
Yeah.
And what Tesla's aiming to do is to have a non-extractive economy, non-extractive mining, so that all the materials for new products are extracted from existing products.
Yeah.
And really, what more could you want?
Yeah. No, she's a ripper, man. What sort of what's the performance, like brake horsepower or whatever?
So it's 350 kilowatts, which is about 450 horsepower in this car.
Yeah.
It's a dual motor.
Yeah.
If we can find a spot up here, we can stop and give it a bit of a
squirt.
Yeah. Now I showed you the video of World Woodchopping champ Dave Foster, who we took yesterday. He was having a ball.
No, you can zoom around the state all right in this.
Yeah, and this is the great thing, right? Because Tassie has the cleanest air in the world, but places, larger cities like Hobart, there's still a lot of pollution in the city from all the diesel and petrol pollution.
Yeah.
Now, the great opportunity is that when we go 100% electric, even our cities will have pure clean air. And, you know, when you think about it, we've all been breathing in diesel and diesel particulate and carbon monoxide from petrol exhaust our entire lives. And everyone has in every city around the world. So when we do go 100% electric, it's going to be the first time that humans have had pure clean air in their cities for generations.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know much about electric boats though, whether that's on the horizon as well.
Well, it'll be handy.
Yeah.
Nice and quiet, no emissions. Like the 4-strokes we have now compared to the 2-strokes are, you know, like a revelation. But to go to electric again for an outboard, be pretty good.
Yeah. I know that in Scandinavia they have an electric ferry running from, I think it's Denmark to Sweden.
Right.
And it doesn't go that far, but it's big. It's massive. And it just glides through the water without any noise. So that'd be an amazing trip to ride on a fully electric boat through the water. But yeah, everything will need to be converted over the next decade or two, and hopefully we'll see even ships like the Spirit of Tasmania. I'm not sure what the most viable option is there. Perhaps hydrogen, something like that.
Well, yeah. If West Coast Renewables project gets off the ground down there, that's all about hydrogen production more than anything. They offered cheap power to Quota Seafoods to get their salmon farm operations onshore a while back, but they won't want it because they're making way too much money and just dumping their crap in our ocean. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Twiggy Forrest getting involved with human aquaculture.
So he bought into it, did he? Or?
I don't know where it's at now, but he bought shares in there, and I don't know if he was trying to take it over or what have you, but they've just got to get him out of our inshore marine environment.
Yeah.
They're just killing it.
When did it all kick off, and how long has it been going on for?
Well, we started having seals relocated on us up here from salmon farmers in the early 90s. We had 30 years of it. Some springs they drop 4,000 or 5,000 seals directly onto our fishing ground in our most productive fishing period. We got sick of it. It was a mental health episode that stopped that.
So they're actually moving the seals around?
Yeah, they didn't want to replace the nets or spend the money needed. Tassal down south, so the problem seals were rounded up, put in a trailer, and then bounced up the highway for 8 hours and dumped onto our fishing.
Fair dinkum.
Yeah, they trapped them at the fish farms and then relocated them up here. They didn't do any baseline science before they started dumping these animals here. They went against their own department regulations where it stated that do not move fish products or fish offal or anything containing fish offal from one waterway to another to help stop the spread of marine pests and disease. But the government gave them permits to do that. It took 30 years it took a mental health episode in the end. No one was going to do anything, so I chose to seal relocated down the highway. Pulled him up at the traffic lights like a commando, thought I could talk him into going on strike, had $2,000 to throw to him. But it didn't go down real well, near went violent.
Oh, fair dinkum.
Yeah, so I rang the industry rep, just out of frustration. I just said, what the fuck do we have to do to get some action around here? You know, they shut our fishery down basically, because there's only 5 or 6 of us, it didn't matter to them. Anyway, my mate Bob, who's a returned Vietnam serviceman, he rang up our industry rep the next day and said, I don't want to see Craigie end up like 2 of my good buddies that walked off the pier at Ulverston. He said, I recognise all the symptoms he's displaying. He said, he did his bit yesterday, and tomorrow I'm doing mine. And that night, I think the Minister's advisor was called out, and they made the call that they'd stop relocating seals. On the 24th of December, they gave us a little Christmas present, smarmy bastards. And that just made me even more angry. You know, that minister, the concerned, was on the mental health line before he got elected. He promised fishermen he'd stop this seal thing. All he needed to do was get in, and as soon as he got in, he wouldn't return our phone calls, and he couldn't even stand looking at the fishermen in the service station there one day.
Yeah, wow.
So,
Well, it sounds like it took a lot of courage to do what you did, and I think, like, I've been an activist for a couple of years. I'm pretty new to it, but I think most people don't realise the power that they've got with a lot of small actions like that.
Yeah.
They can have a pretty big impact.
yeah, I don't condone violence or anything. I didn't set out to create a violent episode, but out of frustration and their ignorance and inaction on our concerns over 30 years, got me bubbling to the point where I just lost it. I just saw him go past this day. I was watching on the news the mussel farmer that was shut down by Tassau down the Don Tricasto Channel. He couldn't prove that they killed his farm, but they did. And he lost everything. He was in tears, and I was thinking about that driving along, and then the seal relocator went past me with an empty trailer, and I thought, just one of those snap decisions. I thought I could talk him into going on strike.
Yeah.
But it was funny, I locked him there. It must have been 5 or 6 minutes at the traffic lights in Somerset. Traffic built up both directions. I didn't hear any horn being blown. I reckon a good bit of street theatre for a lot of them on their way home from work that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm down for civil disobedience, Craig. I've done a bit with Extinction Rebellion on the mainland. With campaigning for strong, urgent action on the climate crisis, and you can tell, like, climate activists are feeling the same frustration, watching our leaders do nothing, even though it's been clear for decades. The science has been there for decades that we need to act urgently, and I applaud groups like Extinction Rebellion who do have the courage to get out there and conduct non-violent civil disobedience to try to elevate this issue to the level that it deserves.
Yeah, mate, yeah. It's the biggest issue facing us. And this crew here, I was told that 72% of our sitting politicians in this state come from two private schools.
Oh, fair dinkum.
Yeah, and I believe there's a similar demographic in our upper public service. So what happens there is you get overeducated twits with no skin, and that's what we're dealing with, all this shit basically.
Yeah, I mentioned before, I took Leanne Mitchell a few weeks ago for a drive as well, and she's founded the local party, and I really love the fact that they support independent candidates, but they I think they have 2 citizens' assemblies per year. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, they plan to do that, and also you can retain your independence within the party structure. It's not long party lines, and I think their whole setup is very different to the major parties. And their focus is on getting locals into Parliament, getting that diversity at the table, getting some skin at the table to address, because you've got to fight. This has got to be fought from the inside.
Yeah.
And we need people in there to do that. And Leanne, from what I've seen and met and talked, she's a great candidate.
Yep.
She's had the benefit of the legal background and also in the system for quite a long time. She knows it backwards. So you want someone that can go in there, not like a Jackie Lambie that's got to find a way and then stumble along and not play politics. Just get in there and truly represent us and our best interests. And once we get 1 or 2 in there, I think that'll be the end of the major parties.
Yep. No, I agree. And she, so she's going up against your mate Erica Betts.
Yeah.
For competing for that. That Senate seat. And
Jonathan Dunyam, who they've put on top of the ticket. I think he got 670 primary votes. That's what got him in.
Is that
all that, yeah, mate. And then all the associated preferences.
Yeah, wow.
So the unrepresentative swill that Keating was referring to years ago.
Yeah.
He's your typical party hack. And the fact he's Assistant Minister for Fisheries, He wouldn't know a fish from a ferret.
Mm.
Yeah, there's your problem. If I didn't have 3 young kids and sort of so entrenched in what I do, I'd probably go for the Senate again. But I believe Leanne's a much better candidate and can do a better job. I just hope she gets the profile and gets the backing of people behind her.
Well, they're already coming after her and other small parties. We saw a few weeks ago they've increased the membership threshold from 500 to 1,500, which is just another dirty tactic that was also backed by the federal Labor.
No, this is what they do.
Just creating a moat around themselves.
It's all about their self-preservation until the greater population wake up to that fact and throw them out on their arse and send them a loud message. If you want good candidates, you've got to put good candidates in there to increase the talent pool, you know.
Yeah, and I know that with that decision to increase the membership from 500 to 1,500, there's another party which you've probably heard of called the New Liberals.
Yes, I was contacted by them.
Did you hear what they did after that announcement?
No.
The leader of the New Liberals, Victor Klein, so they had 800 and something members, so they fell below the new threshold. So Victor Klein put a tweet out, and within 48 hours they had another 2,000 members and got above the threshold anyway. So even though the Liberals and Labor Party tried to shut them down, there's that much frustration and anger in the community that they were able to pump up their membership anyway. And I'm sure we're going to see the same thing with the local party.
Now, the thing I've found is most of these politicians are not that bright. They're certainly well versed in how to get elected. And down here they just throw bags of cash around everywhere, put 100 big posters up of their head, but I think those days are sadly...
People are starting to see through the marketing
and
the advertising and the manipulation. It's quite a nice road through here as well.
It's beautiful roads all around Tassie. I spent the better part of my life going over nearly every one of them.
How's it? Is drive still feeling good?
Yeah, mate. No, you could leave this at home with me if you like. Take the hammer off.
Right. If we've got a bit of a straight...
I'm trying to find... There's one up around the corner up here. So it tells you if you're over the centre.
Yeah, it'll give you a warning if you come next to the line there.
So all these roads are, GPS?
This is actually all through vision.
Right.
So the GPS for the maps, but these lines and everything you're seeing popping up here is actually all feeding in from the 8 cameras around it.
Right.
And it's got a incredible processing computer chip in it. So the original Model 3s had an NVIDIA a high-end gaming chip essentially. It wasn't fast enough, so Tesla hired a bunch of the world's best chip developers. They built their own chip, which is 21 times faster than the next best thing. So it has the processing capacity to suck in all this data, all this imagery, and identify what it is around it. And so what actually happens is that there's over 1 million Teslas on the road now. All that data is getting sent back to Tesla, and they're feeding it into their machine learning algorithm. Right. So the software is learning how to identify stop signs, people, motorbikes, scooters, bicycles, trucks, cars, and everything else. And every week, it just gets more and more data, and it gets better and better at identifying, and the software gets better at driving itself. So already with the current software, you're 10 times less likely to get into an accident because this car will actually avoid collisions. If a car swerves into us, the car will actually react faster than you and I and take over and take evasive action.
Jeez, that's handy. Makes getting home from the pub a bit easier.
How about along here somewhere?
Up around the corner up here, there's a section that's quite straight.
I'm just going to capture some of the background there. Incredible, beautiful green rolling hills.
Take control immediately. fertile soil, rainfall, forests, and the waterways. I think there's 10 or 11 major river systems that empty out just along this small bit of coast here.
Yeah, wow.
Let's give her a squirt along here.
Yeah, so if you come to a full, if no one come behind you, come to a full stop here. So you can stay on the road. Stay on the road.
Yeah.
And when you're ready, you can put your foot right to the floor and do a 0 to 100, all the way to the floor.
Righto.
Okay? Hang on to it. Hang on to it.
Fair dinkum.
Righto, that's good. So just let it off now. How's that?
That's pretty impressive.
You expecting that?
No. No.
You held on to it a bit longer than Dave Foster yesterday.
Oh, I would have kept going. Oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah, so that's 0 to 100 in about 3.3 seconds.
That's awesome, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does it cost to recharge?
Full charge off peak at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, you're fully charged for $7.50.
Yeah, no, everyone should have one of those.
Yeah, it's such a no-brainer, and we talked before we started filming, but it's really, it's just so blatantly obvious now that the oil industry and their influence over governments around the world is what's holding back the electric vehicle revolution.
Yeah.
But that's changing now, and we're seeing countries around the world rapidly uptake EVs.
Yeah.
Norway is at over 70% of new cars in Norway are now electric, and they're banning the sale of petrol and diesel cars by 2025, just 4 years away.
Yeah.
So we are going to see a massive transition to electric vehicles over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And that will actually have profound impact on politics, because what electric vehicles represent is renewables and electric vehicles is a decentralized form of power. So local communities can create their own electricity,
Yeah.
and they can power their own cars, whereas coal, oil and gas are all centralized versions of energy,
Yeah.
which can be centralized and monopolized and controlled.
Yeah.
Whereas renewables and EVs are decentralized. So with the decentralization of energy and mobility will come decentralization of political power,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is going to be an absolute game changer, I think.
Oh shit, yeah, mate. You know, one of my biggest costs in fishing is my fuel.
Mm.
You know, it's probably the single biggest cost over the course of a year.
And you as a small operator, you don't have the bargaining power that large fishing companies have. So imagine what the deals that large fishing companies do to get their petrol price down.
Yeah.
What this will do is level the playing field,
Yeah.
so that everyone's paying if your community can generate your own power and very cheaply,
Yeah.
and then you can use that for your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
We're 95% self-sufficient at this stage for energy. So, you know, it's just a common sense, like we could have the whole state running on. And with these wind farm, like that West Coast Renewables project, massive amount of energy going to be produced there.
Absolutely. And then Tassie doesn't have to depend on anyone for energy. Like at the moment, Tassie has to import oil or fuel, refined fuel. When you go to 100% renewables, you won't even need to import that.
No.
Full self-sustainability.
Yeah. And how much more money is going to go into our community instead of into a petrochemical company with fuel, you know?
Exactly.
It's huge costs.
Instead of money going to Saudi Arabia, it stays here.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic that the very people in there to represent us are selling us out and preventing us from being in a more free, lucrative, profitable sort of situation?
Massively. They're focused on that they only care about the profits of a very small number of people at the very top, and they are costing everybody else massive amount. Our whole economy could be much stronger and more resilient with a decentralized model, which is based on clean renewable energy and electric vehicles.
That's right. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Does he make an electric four-wheel drive that tow a boat?
Oh yeah, have you seen the Cybertruck?
No.
when we finish up, I'll show you the Cybertruck. It'll come out in the next 2 years. They've already announced it. But basically, it's the size of a pickup truck. It does 0 to 100 in 2.9 seconds, which is faster than this.
Wow.
It's a tri-motor. It'll do 800 kilometers range.
Wow.
And you can plug your tools into it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, big tray back. And it'll pull a Ford F-150 uphill.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I've seen a YouTube thing of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The fully stainless steel one?
Yeah.
That's the Tesla Cybertruck.
Ah.
Yeah.
That'd be a good fishing rig.
Absolutely.
Do you talk to this Tesla fella at all?
Elon Musk?
Yeah.
I haven't yet.
No.
I hope to someday. But
I might challenge him. I might tell him that I don't reckon there'd be a four-wheel drive that I couldn't wreck.
Oh yeah, well you have to try pretty hard with the Cybertruck. Fully stainless steel. It's actually got bulletproof glass as well.
Well, that might be handy as a politician in the future.
Yeah. You never know.
I might send him an email, see if he'll give me a vehicle.
Yeah, I mean the Cybertruck is going to be a massive game changer, and I've heard that they've got 1.2 million pre-orders for the Cybertruck.
Wow.
And I've heard that outside of America, outside of the US, Australians have ordered more Cybertrucks than any other country in the world.
Wow.
So we're going to see a huge uptake of EVs over the next few years, which is brilliant.
The coastline down here, where it's so beautiful. And the amount of species in the water here, and the fishing that's coming back now after years of pollution. We were the dirtiest bit of coastline in Australia.
It must feel amazing to see that fishing coming back here.
Yeah.
It must have been depressing for a long time, but it must give you a lot of hope now.
Oh, it was depressing. I fished on the perimeter of the dirty water and the clean water. Yeah. And that's why I got so up and about, you know, like we've just lived through one of the dirtiest periods with as far as pollution and what's been thrown into our ocean here. I don't want to see it going back to that.
Yeah.
We've got to set this precedent and standard. Oceans are no longer a dumping ground for waste or for massive profits in the case of salmon farms. Yeah. And the education in fish larvae and the effects that pollution and nasties has on them. It's a lottery for fish larvae to survive from one year to the next without human interference into that environment. So
yeah, it's great to hear stories like that, and hopefully it continues to come back, and we all move to a more sustainable model, which is more about locally produced goods and smaller independent operators, and
quality
circular.
driven, small, and include as many people as you can to let them all make a bob in some way, shape or form. And for young people, get them on the water, you know. It's a shame where our richer fisheries like the abalone, crayfish and shark and everything, it's all gone to Quota, which ends up in the hands of an investor, and then you have the fisherman with his hand out trying to get a decent deal to buy the quota to go to catch the fish that he owns. Now the biggest losers they've found right around the world is the communities and the fishermen. As soon as it goes to quota, the fishermen go, your access to the fish goes, and ultimately that stock will go as well. You know, we have the opportunity here with our emerging fisheries, the existing old fishermen of the area, to provide pathways as these old fellas go, and the rise in value and species, get them involved in the high schools with the science side of things. You know, what I've learned, the otolith bone, which is the ear bone out of the fish, that's how they age them. They cut that out, they dissect it, and then put it under the microscope, and it's got growth rings, much the same as a tree. Kids can do that in school. They've got this other machine which breaks down the mineral element or component of each ring, and they can ascertain where it's been swimming.
Yeah, right.
You know, for instance, the juvenile grenadier on the west coast have got a copper spike in the first year or two of their growth rate because of the huge amount of copper that's in the water there.
Wow.
So all of this stuff our kids can get involved with. everyone talks about sustainability. Everyone talks about engagement of our youth, but no bastard is actually doing anything concrete about getting to that point. And with Quota and investors, it's a very complicated process. Then talking about getting some kids into the mix, because there's no cream left for anybody. Once the quota holder takes what he wants. Yeah. And isn't that? That's absurd. You know, the fact that we've got a foreign investor with his own website putting quota up for auction, and us fishermen outbidding each other to get the quota to catch the fish that we own.
So can you just explain the quota system and how it's come to be?
Well, yeah, it goes to quota, so they go on a total allowable catch or whatever, set their quota, and then those units can be bought and sold.
Yeah.
So you as a wealthy person can come along and buy yourself a fishery, and then for anybody that wants to catch that species, they have to lease that quota.
So you don't even have to live there? There's no requirement for you to live there or anything?
No, well, it's not owner-operated. In the old days, like, it should have been owner-operated. If you want to make a living out of fishing, you get on the boat and go catch the fish, you know. No one begrudges anybody that, but when you've got investors that buy the quota and do nothing except sit back and dictate what price you pay, you know, like recently they were paying $60,000, the cray fishermen, per tonne for quota. Some of them have to pay up front, and then if the price drops and the market goes, the fisherman wears it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's absurd.
So the investors have no skin in the game. They're actually not out there fishing. They're detached. They're completely detached from that area and that environment.
They'll buy, say, shark quota. They'll lease it to the fisherman. He'll have to pay, say, for instance, say $6 a kilo, and then he'll get paid 10. So out of a tonne catch, you know, the greater percentage is going to him. And in the case of the cray industry, they're working poor. The quota owner is getting 2/3 of the return, and the fisherman and the deckhand and the boat are having to sort of make do with a third. And
so it's just like rent seeking, basically.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's wrong. It's wrong. And they've found right around the world now, as soon as it goes to quota, the community lose access to the fish, the fishermen lose access to the fish, and there's no return coming in. And so, like our blue grenadier, 12,000 tonne, caught by New Zealand trawlers, we get 2 forklift jobs on the wharf unloading it, and they take the whole profit. That's a community-owned resource.
Yeah.
So people are not aware, they think, oh, you own quota, you own the fish. Well, you don't. Quota and entitlements only entitles you to trade in certain quantities. At the end of the day, you, me, and every kid and every member of Australia has as much right to those fish as what those quota holders are. So that being the case, the debate should be going around, what price does the community want to pay for the fish that they own, and what price do we want our deckhands and our skippers getting to make it profitable for them? And then if there's it's all asked about. 2/3 should be going to the fisherman, the deckhand and the boat, and if there's an investor, if he wants a third, sure. If they want, they can do that. So, and we have the ability to change that because we own the fish. It's a common property resource, and under the Act it mentions that being a common property resource, it has to be managed to provide a broad return to the general community. Well, we're getting sweet jack shit out of all of our fisheries. So, you know, it's about taking back what we have and going forward from there. But we'll see where we go. You know, ultimately it comes back to the fishermen. If they want to fight and they want to stand up and they want to unify and say, get fucked, we've had a gutful. But the problem is that with money, there's always someone that are willing to undercut or do it for less. Or for the ab industry, they fought tooth and nail to get a $2 pay rise from $8 a kilo to 10. And then people came into the industry, not full-time fishermen, and undercut them. So all their good work they fought for over 8 or 10 years was lost. The scabs, more or less, you know.
So you're not really after incremental change either. You want to change the system basically, so that it puts the power back with the little guys.
We want ownership and access to our stock, not have to deal with some foreign investor. And how it all went to that was very untoward in the beginning. Politicians did quite well out of cray quota when it went that way, and wealthy politicians own Quota now and have Quota and what have you. So to get anything changed, it's a bit complicated.
They're gonna have to go against their own interests.
No, but it comes back to the fishermen. If they want to stand up and they want to do what needs to be done, it squarely lays at their feet.
And are you seeing the conversations? Are you hearing those conversations within with fishermen?
Oh, you'll get a broad range of views from within the industry. You talk to the fella that's been in it his whole life. He's going to have a different view to the fella that's come in and had to borrow money to buy a boat or lease a boat in Quota. It just has to be viable. And in the early days before it went to Quota, Jim Hersey, famous fishing family here, he suggested instead of going to Quota, you could make a living out of 15 pots and you could support 2 or 3 kids and bring up a family on what that was his argument. But he got voted, I believe, out by all the ones that wanted the quick return. And you can't blame them. Some of them walked away with quite a lot of money when it did go to Quota, and then sold up, sold out, went to an investor. But the debate, it has to be had. What is a fair and proper return to those doing all the work, taking all the risk of feeding our community? When that debate gets underway, then we might see. That's why I'd like to get in there. I'll certainly kick that along.
Yeah.
And the Marine Resources Department here is totally underfunded. They've gone from being on 2 floors down to one little office down the back corner, and if you wanted to look at it as an overall, if you wanted to create a ripe environment for avaricious salmon farms to expand, they've underfunded our Marine Resources Department. Our representative body is compromised by representing salmon farm interests as well as wild fisheries. And here we are.
Yeah, it's the same thing they've done with defunding, organisations like CSIRO and climate research, etc. as well. They just undermine the institutions that are feeding back the information that's needed to make the right decisions. So there's definitely a pattern there.
Yeah, they've sold out. Yeah, we'll see where we go. We're going to have to mature as a nation over the next few years if we're going to address and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're almost done. We're coming up to Wynyard now. If people want to get involved in this community with a lot of the things that you're talking about, what should they do? Can they follow you or how do they connect? I've got
a Facebook site. There's a whole list of videos that I've done over the last 4 or 5 years. I'll be doing a fair bit more coming up here shortly. Just keep an eye out on the Facebook site. If there's a rally, the West Coast Tracks people will be organising a rally here shortly.
Yep.
And it's not just the West Coast Tracks issue. That's a symptom. And there's lots of symptoms of the bigger problem, and that's the locking out of us, the community, from that which we own, what we hold dear, and just turn up. If you do see a rally, go along and support, and share the information. But ultimately, it all comes down to election. What I'd say is just don't vote for the major parties. If you want to send a loud message, and particularly Braddon, we're the biggest swingers in the nation. We have the ability here to send a loud message, not only to this place here, but the rest of Australia too. There's no good whinging and going crook about everything and then keep voting the bastards back in. Throw them out.
It's such a huge opportunity with the upcoming election as well, because it potentially could be, we could see a minority, like a hung parliament. And if that's the case, if you've got an independent, if you've got an independent representing you, representing your electorate, and the government is in minority at the next election, that is an enormous amount of power that you're giving back to your electorate.
Yeah, the salmon farms didn't want me getting too much traction at all. When I was in Sydney, I flew up there, did a protest. I got a bed sheet out of the hotel and a couple of broomsticks and wrote on it, "No more corporate welfare against salmon farms." But Paul Murray, I was told at the time, on Sky, was paid considerable money if they could get me on there and grill me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And my advice at the time was, there's nothing in it for you, Craig. None of these people here in Sydney are voting for you.
Yeah.
So I was tempted to go on there, like I wasn't concerned.
Yeah.
But you know, the lengths they'll go to smear, like Erica Betts bringing up some bullshit from 1994 or something out of desperation. I knew I had them straight up when Eric did that. Bit like playing footy. As soon as they start trying to punch you, can I just call in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go and see me mate Norm. He'd love to have a look at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as soon as they start swinging and hitting you from behind, you know you've got them.
Yeah.
They're playing the man and not the ball.
Absolutely. And that's when you know. When they start noticing you and attacking you, you know you're doing something right.
Yeah, mate.
Just the park button on the end there, that button on the end, that's park.
That?
Yep. And we might wrap it up. We'll wrap it up now, and then we'll go and say good day to you.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. A great car. Way of the future, you know, like, and especially Tasmania. Like, we could really embrace this big time.
Absolutely.
And old mate Tesla, he should get down here and have a look at the place.
Yeah, he should. I'm sure he'd love it.
Yeah.
Craig Garland, future independent candidate, hopefully at the next election. Thanks very much for driving this electric vehicle today, and it's been great chatting with you as well.
No, thanks very much. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.
I'm still buzzing from
from flooring it. Yeah, that'll make the highlights real for sure.
I can see what Big Dave was talking about.
Yeah. Awesome. Cheers.
Yeah.